The moment Alexander's family empire went public, I watched Emma, the scholarship student he'd sponsored, carefully slip a small vial into his champagne glass. In my previous life, I had rushed forward like a fool, knocked the glass away, and publicly accused her of drugging him. Emma had cried, claimed I was destroying her reputation, and ran from the hotel straight into an oncoming car. This time, I simply smiled and raised my own champagne. This time, I knew the truth about their little game. "Jenny, you look radiant tonight," Alexander said, approaching with that charming smile that once made my heart race. His tuxedo was immaculate, his success radiating from every pore. "Thank you for celebrating with me." "Congratulations, Alexander," I replied warmly, clinking my glass against his doctored one. "Your company going public is incredible. I'm so proud of you." He lifted the champagne to his lips without hesitation, drinking deeply while his eyes never left mine. I watched every drop disappear, cold satisfaction settling in my chest. In my past life, after preventing him from drinking the same drugged champagne, he'd seemed grateful, holding me close and whispering how much he loved me. 3 years later, on our wedding night, he had used those same drugs on me. "That champagne was part of a game between Emma and me," he had explained as I lay helpless on our marriage bed. "Why did you interfere 3 years ago, Jenny? You caused her death, and now you'll pay for it." He had locked me in that room with 3 thugs he'd hired. The torture lasted hours, humiliation, pain, complete betrayal. I died, screaming his name, begging him to remember our love. But there had been no love, only Emma, always Emma, hidden behind every smile, every kiss, every promise. She was who he truly loved. I was just a convenient fiancé whose family's wealth served his ambitions. Now, watching him finish the poisoned champagne with that trusting expression, I felt nothing but calm determination. "Excuse me," I said sweetly, touching his arm. "I want to congratulate your parents, too." Alexander nodded, already looking flushed. The drug was fast-acting. Within 10 minutes, he'd need somewhere private to handle the effects. And Emma would be waiting in my family's private suite upstairs. Yes, they were meeting in my suite, in the hotel my family owned. The disrespect was breathtaking. I moved through the glittering crowd, exchanging pleasantries while keeping one eye on Alexander. The Grand Meridian Ballroom sparkled with the city's elite. Everyone who mattered had come to celebrate the Morrison family's triumph. From across the room, I watched Alexander excuse himself from a conversation. His hand went to his collar, loosening his tie. The flush on his cheeks deepened, restlessness evident in his movements. Perfect timing. I made my own excuses and caught the eye of David, the head server I'd known since childhood. "David," I said quietly, pressing a small recording device into his hand, "deliver this to room 2847 in 15 minutes. Don't knock, just leave it by the door." He glanced at the device, understanding immediately. "Of course, Miss Jenny." I headed for the elevator. The presidential suite on the 28th floor was my family's permanent reservation, where I'd had my first kiss with Alexander, where we'd planned our future together. How fitting it would now be the scene of his downfall. The elevator rose smoothly. I checked my reflection. Long black hair in perfect waves, flawless makeup, serene smile. I looked like the perfect society princess. But inside, I was calculating every move. I positioned myself in an alcove near the suite, close enough to see but hidden from view. Alexander arrived first, jacket dishevelled, breathing laboured. Even from a distance, I could see his desperation as he fumbled with the keycard Emma had stolen from my purse weeks ago. Emma appeared 5 minutes later, transformed from her modest black dress into a revealing red silk slip. Her blonde hair was artfully tousled, lips painted crimson. She paused at the door, checking her reflection, adjusting her cleavage, practicing her sultry smile. She knocked softly, a coded rhythm. The door opened immediately. Alexander's hand shooting out to grab her wrist and pull her inside with urgent hunger. The door slammed shut. At exactly the 15-minute mark, David left the recording device by the door and disappeared. The device would capture everything and stream directly to my bus phone. I connected to the feed. The audio was crystal clear. "You lost the bet," came Emma's breathless giggle. "The drug worked faster than expected." Alexander's deep laugh rumbled through the speakers. "I never lose, sweetheart. I just like watching you think you've won." Every word was a mockery of what I'd believed we shared. But I forced myself to keep recording. This evidence was crucial. My phone buzzed. Maya, my assistant, "Reporters ready, social media, accounts prepared, just say when." I typed back, 20 minutes, then release everything. I returned to the ballroom just as Robert Morrison took the stage for his speech. "Tonight marks not just Morrison Industries' success, but our family's new beginning," he announced proudly. "I want to thank everyone who supported us, especially the families who stood by us, particularly my future daughter-in-law Jenny, whose support has meant everything to my son Alexander." Applause filled the room. I nodded graciously, playing the devoted fiancé perfectly. If only they knew where their golden boy was right now. My phone buzzed. Maya. "Upload complete, going viral now." I waited. In seconds, scandals could destroy reputations. I'd learned that the hard way. This time, I controlled the narrative. It started with whispers near the bar, phones lit up throughout the ballroom. Guests checked their devices, expressions shifting from curiosity to shock to excitement. Robert Morrison continued speaking, oblivious to the digital wildfire spreading through his audience. "My son, Alexander, has always been a man of integrity," he declared. "Someone who understands loyalty and commitment." "Mr. Morrison," a reporter pushed forward, phone raised, "are you aware that explicit videos of your son are trending on social media right now?" The microphone slipped from Robert's hand, creating sharp feedback that silenced the room. "Where is Alexander?" someone called out. I stepped forward, confusion painted on my face. "He wasn't feeling well," I announced clearly. "He went upstairs to rest." "Should I check on him?" Maya appeared beside me, face flushed with practiced panic. "Miss Jenny, you need to see this," she said loudly. "There's a video. It's everywhere." She thrust her phone into my hands. There, for everyone to see, was crystal clear footage of Alexander and Emma in my family suite. The audio was perfect. Every word, every moan, every damning detail. "Oh my God," I whispered, hand flying to my throat. That's our suite, where Alexander said he was resting." The crowd pressed closer, phones appearing everywhere. #Morrison Scandal was already trending with thousands of shares. Robert's face went white. "This has to be fake," he stammered. "A malicious attack." "The metadata doesn't lie," a tech journalist called out. "This was recorded tonight, in real time, in this hotel." I let out a small sob, covering my face. I need air," I announced, pushing through the crowd. But I didn't leave. I positioned myself near the elevators, accepting sympathy from guests while observing the chaos. "That bastard doesn't deserve you, Jenny," Mrs. Patterson declared angrily. "To think we've known that boy since diapers." "You're better off without him," another added, "betraying his fiancée with some scholarship student." I accepted their condolences gracefully, the perfect wronged woman. The elevator dinged. Alexander stumbled out, shirt half-buttoned, hair dishevelled. Emma followed, frantically smoothing her wrinkled dress. They froze, seeing the crowd, phones raised, cameras flashing. "Alexander Morrison," a reporter shouted. "Comments on the explicit video with over 2 million views." Colour drained from Alexander's face. Emma screamed, trying to hide behind him. "What video?" he demanded, voice cracking. Someone thrust a phone at him. I watched his expression crumble as he saw himself on screen, intimate moments broadcast worldwide. His eyes found mine across the crowd. We stared at each other, the man who murdered me in my previous life, and the woman who just destroyed his future in this one. I gave him a small, sad smile and mouthed, "Did you enjoy the champagne?" Understanding dawned. He knew I had orchestrated everything. The champagne, the recording, the humiliation, all carefully planned. But it was too late. The damage was done. And this was only the beginning. Alexander pushed through the crowd toward me, his face a mask of desperation and rage. "Jenny, we need to talk. Now." I stepped back gracefully, letting tears gather in my eyes. "Don't touch me," I whispered, just loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "How could you do this to us? To our families? You don't understand," he hissed, reaching for my arm. "This isn't what it looks like." "It looks like you're screwing your scholarship student in my family's private suite," Mrs. Patterson interjected coldly, positioning herself between us. "On the night of your company's celebration, no less." Security appeared, hotel staff I'd discreetly signalled earlier. "Sir, we need you to come with us," the head of security said firmly. "There are reporters trying to get upstairs." Alexander's eyes burned into mine. "This conversation isn't over." "Yes, it is," I replied softly, then turned to address the remaining guests. "I'm so sorry everyone had to witness this. Our families have been friends for generations, and I never wanted our private matters to become public spectacle." The crowd murmured sympathetically. I was handling this with such grace, such dignity, the perfect victim. Robert Morrison approached me, his face haggard. "Jenny, please, let us explain. Alexander has been under tremendous stress." "Uncle Robert," I interrupted gently, using the familiar address I'd called him since childhood. "I think it's best if we postpone any discussions until emotions aren't running so high." He nodded gratefully, not realizing I was buying myself time to execute the next phase of my plan. As the crowd began to disperse, I made my way to the hotel's business center. Maya was waiting with her laptop open, social media feeds streaming across multiple screens. "The video has 15 million views and climbing," she reported. "Entertainment Tonight wants an exclusive interview. Forbes is calling about the business implications. And there's something else. Emma just posted her own statement." I leaned over her shoulder to read the screen. Emma's tearful Instagram post was a masterpiece of manipulation. I never meant for this to happen. Alexander and I fell in love, but he was trapped in an arranged marriage. We tried to stay away from each other, but love won't be denied. I'm sorry Jenny had to find out this way, but I won't apologize for loving someone who loves me back. Sometimes the heart wants what it wants. #true love, #no regrets. I laughed. Actually, laughed. She thinks she's won. Maya looked confused. Isn't this bad for us? She's painting herself as the romantic heroine. Oh, Maya, I said, pulling out my phone. She has no idea what's coming. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I needed. Hello, Detective Morrison? Yes, this is Jenny Chen. I need to report a theft. Maya's eyes widened as I continued the call. Someone has been using a stolen keycard to access my family's private suite. Yes, I have video evidence, multiple times over the past month. I'm also concerned there may have been other illegal activities, perhaps financial fraud related to the scholarship program. When I hung up, Maya was staring at me. You're going to have her arrested. Emma stole my keycard to access the suite. That's criminal trespass. But more importantly, I've been tracking the scholarship funds Alexander has been giving her. Guess where that money actually came from. Understanding dawned on Maya's face. The Morrison Industries accounts? Embezzlement is a felony, I said calmly. Alexander has been funneling company money through the scholarship program to his mistress. The board of directors will be very interested to learn about this breach of fiduciary duty. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You think you've won? This isn't over. I showed Maya the screen. He's threatening me now. Document this. She screenshot the message immediately. Should we call security? Not yet. Let him dig his grave deeper. Over the next hour, I systematically destroyed Alexander's life from the comfort of the hotel business centre. First, I called my father. Daddy? Yes, I'm fine. Heartbroken, but fine. I need you to know that I'm formally withdrawing from my engagement to Alexander Morrison. Please inform our lawyers that all business partnerships with Morrison Industries are terminated immediately. My father's voice was cold with fury. Consider it done. That boy has disgraced both our families. Next, I called the Morrison Industries board members individually. I'd grown up knowing these men, had charmed them at countless dinner parties and charity events. Mr. Rodriguez, this is Jenny Chen. I'm calling about the irregularities I've discovered in the scholarship program Alexander has been managing. Mrs. Williams? I have some concerns about potential fraud within Morrison Industries that you should be aware of before the stock market opens tomorrow. Mr. Thompson? As someone who's been like an uncle to me, I thought you should know about the embezzlement evidence I'm turning over to investigators. Each call was perfectly calibrated, concerned rather than vindictive, factual rather than emotional. By the time I finished, Alexander's position as heir to Morrison Industries was hanging by a thread. My phone rang. Alexander's father. Jenny, please, you have to stop this. The board is calling for an emergency meeting. They want to remove Alexander from the company entirely. Uncle Robert, I said sadly, I'm not doing anything. I'm simply reporting the crimes I've discovered. If Alexander has been stealing company funds, that's not my fault. But the merger with Patterson Industries, we need that partnership to survive the market volatility. I'm sure you'll figure something out, I interrupted gently. But I can't in good conscience recommend my family do business with a company that has such ethical issues. I hung up before he could respond. Maya looked up from her laptop. The stock price is in freefall, down 30% in after-hours trading. Perfect. Now, for the final touch. I pulled up Emma's Instagram account and began typing a comment on her love declaration. Emma, I'm so glad you finally admitted to your relationship with Alexander. The prosecutors will be very interested in this confession, especially since it establishes premeditation for the theft and fraud charges you'll both be facing. I hope love was worth prison time. XOXO, Jenny. I posted it from my verified account, then sat back to watch the chaos unfold. Within minutes, Emma's comment section exploded. The narrative was shifting from brave woman follows her heart to gold digger destroys family business. The hashtags changed from #TrueLove to #GoldDigger and #PrisonBound. Emma tried to delete her post, but it was too late. Screenshots were everywhere. My phone rang again. This time, it was Alexander himself. You bitch, he snarled. You've destroyed everything. I put the call on speaker so Maya could record it. Alexander, you destroyed everything the moment you chose her over me. I'm just cleaning up the mess. This is revenge, pure and simple. No, I said calmly, this is justice. You murdered me in my previous life, remember? Oh, wait, you don't remember because it hasn't happened yet, but I do. Silence on the other end. Then, what the hell are you talking about? 3 years from now, you would have drugged me on our wedding night. You would have locked me in a room with 3 men who tortured me to death. You would have told me it was revenge for Emma's death, the death I prevented in my previous life by stopping you from drinking that champagne. His breathing became ragged. You're insane. Am I? Tell me, Alexander, how did you know Emma would be waiting in suite 2847 tonight? How did you get the key card? When did you first start embezzling company funds for her? Each question hit him like a physical blow. He couldn't deny any of it because it was all true. The only difference, I continued, is that this time I let you drink the champagne. This time I recorded everything. This time I made sure the world could see exactly who you really are. Jenny, please, we can work this out. No, we can't, because you're going to prison, Alexander, and Emma is going with you. I hung up and turned to Maya, who was staring at me with a mixture of awe and fear. Schedule a press conference for tomorrow morning, I told her. I want to make a statement about moving forward with dignity and grace. Make sure to mention that I'll be personally overseeing the investigation into the Morrison Industries fraud. As Maya made notes, I walked to the window overlooking the city. Somewhere out there, Alexander was probably trying to figure out how to salvage his life. Emma was likely panicking about the legal consequences of her actions, but I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. In my previous life, they had destroyed me completely. This time, I was returning the favour, with interest. 3 days later, I stood behind a podium in my family's corporate headquarters, facing a room full of reporters. I wore a tailored navy suit, professional, composed, untouchable. Behind me, a massive screen displayed financial documents that would bury Alexander forever. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice steady and clear. I've called this press conference to address the criminal activities that have come to light regarding Morrison Industries and the individuals involved. Cameras flashed as I clicked to the first slide. Bank statements filled the screen, highlighting transfers from Morrison Industries Scholarship Fund directly to Emma's personal accounts. Over the past 18 months, Alexander Morrison systematically embezzled $2.3 million from his family's company. The money was funneled through a fake scholarship program and deposited into accounts belonging to Emma Walsh, his accomplice. A reporter's hand shot up. Miss Chen, how did you discover this fraud? I allowed a small, sad smile. When someone breaks into your private property repeatedly, you tend to investigate. What I found was far worse than simple trespassing. The next slide showed security footage timestamps. Emma entering my suite over a dozen times in the past month, always carrying expensive shopping bags. Emma Walsh used stolen keycards to access my family's private suite, treating it as her personal hideaway. But more disturbing was what I found when I traced the source of her sudden wealth. My lawyer, Mr. Davidson, stepped forward with a briefcase full of documents. We've turned over evidence to federal prosecutors showing wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy charges that carry sentences of up to 20 years each. The room erupted with questions. I raised my hand for silence. Yesterday, FBI agents executed search warrants on both Alexander Morrison's residence and Emma Walsh's apartment. What they found confirms everything we've alleged. Another click. Photos of Emma's apartment filled the screen. Designer clothes, expensive jewellery, luxury handbags, all tagged with evidence markers. Emma Walsh has been living like a millionaire on stolen money while pretending to be a struggling scholarship student. She even documented her purchases on social media, providing a perfect paper trail of the fraud. A business reporter called out, "What about Morrison Industries' response?" Alexander Morrison was arrested this morning, I announced calmly. Emma Walsh was taken into custody simultaneously. Both are being held without bail. The satisfaction that coursed through me was intoxicating. In my previous life, I died without anyone knowing the truth. This time, the whole world would witness their downfall. Miss Chen, another reporter pressed. Some are saying this seems like elaborate revenge rather than justice. How do you respond? I met her gaze directly. Justice and revenge aren't mutually exclusive when someone commits crimes against you. Alexander Morrison betrayed not just me personally, but every investor, employee, and partner who trusted him. Emma Walsh didn't just steal money, She stole my family's security codes, invaded our private spaces, and participated in defrauding a publicly traded company. My phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Emma's lawyer just called. She wants to make a deal. Perfect. I'll take one more question, I announced. What's next for you personally, Miss Chen? I'm focusing on my family's business interests, I replied smoothly. We've been approached by several Morrison Industries board members about potential acquisition opportunities. It's tragic when a once great company is destroyed by the greed of a few individuals. As the press conference ended, I felt a hand on my shoulder. My father stood behind me, his expression proud and fierce. Well done, daughter. Your mother and I are impressed by how you've handled this situation. Thank you, Daddy. But we're not finished yet. 2 hours later, I sat in a sterile conference room across from Emma Walsh and her public defender. Emma looked nothing like the confident seductress from 3 nights ago. Her blonde hair was stringy, her face blotchy from crying, and she wore an orange jumpsuit that made her skin look sallow. Jenny, she began desperately, please, you have to listen. Miss Chen, her lawyer interrupted. My client is prepared to provide testimony against Alexander Morrison in exchange for reduced charges. I leaned back in my chair, studying Emma's tear-stained face. What kind of testimony? Emma's voice cracked as she spoke. Alexander planned everything. He told me to seduce him at public events, to make you jealous. He said you were frigid, that you'd never give him what he needed. He promised to divorce you after a year of marriage and marry me instead. My expression never changed, but inside I was calculating. Go on. The drugs, Emma whispered. He'd been testing them for months. He said he needed to know the exact dosage for later. Her lawyer shot her a warning look, but Emma couldn't stop talking. He showed me pictures, Jenny. Pictures of what he planned to do to you on your wedding night. He said you deserved to suffer for being born into wealth, while people like me had nothing. The room went silent. Even her lawyer looked horrified. He's sick, Emma continued, tears streaming down her face. I thought it was just dirty talk, just fantasy. But he kept detailed plans, Jenny, written instructions for how to make you suffer. I felt my blood turn to ice, not from fear, but from the confirmation of what I already knew. In my previous life, those plans had been carried out perfectly. Where are these plans now? I asked quietly. Hidden in his apartment. I can tell you exactly where. I turned to her lawyer. What is your client requesting in exchange for this cooperation? Immunity from the conspiracy charges, reduction of the embezzlement charges to a misdemeanor, and witness protection. I pretended to consider this, letting Emma squirm in her chair. Finally, I spoke. No deal. Emma's face went white. What? Jenny, please. You participated willingly in destroying my life, I said calmly. You broke into my property, stole my access codes, and helped embezzle millions of dollars. Most importantly, you knew about Alexander's plans to hurt me and said nothing. But I can help you put him away forever. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. Emma, Alexander is already finished. His company is bankrupt, his reputation is destroyed, and the evidence we have will put him in prison for decades. I don't need your testimony. Then why did you come here? Her lawyer demanded. I looked down at Emma one last time. I wanted to see if you felt any remorse for what you'd done. You don't. Even now, you're only thinking about saving yourself. As I walked toward the door, Emma screamed after me. You're just as cold as he said you were. No wonder he never loved you. I paused at the threshold without turning around. The difference between us, Emma, is that I was born cold. You became a monster for money. Which one of us is more pathetic? Her sobbing followed me down the hallway. That evening, I met with Ethan Harrison at his family's private club. The Harrison Group had been Morrison Industries' biggest competitor for years. With Alexander's company in freefall, opportunities were emerging. "Jenny," Ethan said, raising his whiskey glass, "I have to admit, I'm impressed. Destroying a major corporation in less than a week takes real skill." "I didn't destroy Morrison Industries," I corrected. "Alexander did. I simply made sure everyone could see the truth." Ethan laughed. "Semantics. The result is the same. My father wants to discuss acquisition terms." "I'm listening." "We'll buy Morrison Industries assets for 30 cents on the dollar. Your family gets 15% of the new combined company, plus board positions." It was a generous offer, but I'd learned to negotiate from the best. 25%, I countered, and I want the CEO position of the new entity. Ethan's eyebrows rose. "You want to run the company yourself?" "Who better? I know every aspect of Morrison Industries' operations. I've studied their weaknesses for years, and I have something Alexander never had." "Which is?" I smiled coldly. "The complete trust of their former business partners. When this is over, every company that was burned by Alexander will want to work with me instead." Ethan extended his hand. "Deal. Though I have to ask, what happens when Alexander gets out of prison eventually?" "He won't," I said simply, shaking his hand. "The federal charges carry mandatory minimums. Emma's testimony about the assault plans will add attempted kidnapping and conspiracy charges. Alexander Morrison will die in prison." Cheers. As I left the club, I reflected on how perfectly everything was unfolding. In my previous life, I'd been naive, trusting, completely unprepared for betrayal. This time, I was the one pulling the strings. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Morrison Industries stock delisted after CEO arrested for fraud. I smiled, looking up at the city skyline. Tomorrow, I would start building my empire on the ashes of Alexander's dreams. And somewhere in a federal holding cell, the man who tortured me to death in another life was finally learning what real suffering felt like. 6 months later, I stood in Alexander's former office, now mine, looking down at the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. The nameplate on the mahogany desk read, "Jenny Chen, CEO, Harrison Morrison Enterprises." Everything he'd built, everything he'd dreamed of controlling, was now mine. Maya burst through the door, practically vibrating with excitement. "Jenny, you need to see this." She thrust a tablet into my hands. The headline made me smile. "Emma Walsh found dead in prison cell. Apparent suicide." I read the article carefully. Emma had been found hanging in her cell with a bedsheet, a farewell note claiming she couldn't live with the guilt of her crimes. The note also contained detailed confessions about other fraud schemes she and Alexander had planned. "How convenient," I murmured, handing the tablet back to Maya. "Convenient?" Maya's eyes widened. "Jenny, you didn't—" "Of course not," I said calmly, though I may have mentioned to certain inmates that Emma had been cooperating with federal prosecutors. Prison can be such a dangerous place for snitches. Maya stared at me with a mixture of awe and terror. Over the past 6 months, she'd watched me transform from heartbroken fiancée to ruthless corporate queen. Sometimes I wondered if she recognized me anymore. My intercom buzzed. "Miss Chen, your 2 o'clock is here?" "Send him in." The door opened and Detective Rodriguez entered, his expression grim. He'd been investigating Alexander's case from the beginning and had become something of an ally. "Jenny, we have a problem." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Alexander's parole hearing?" He nodded grimly. "His lawyer is arguing that Emma's death eliminates a key witness. They're claiming prosecutorial misconduct, saying we coerced her testimony. There's a chance he could get a reduced sentence." I leaned back in my leather chair, fingers steepled. In my previous life, Alexander had lived free for 3 years after my death, before finally facing consequences. I wouldn't let history repeat itself. "Detective, do you remember the storage unit we discussed?" His eyebrows rose. You mean the theoretical storage unit that might hypothetically contain evidence? The very one. Unit 247 at Secure Store on 5th Avenue. The combination is Alexander's birthday. Rodriguez made a note, trying to hide his smile. And what might we hypothetically find there? Detailed plans for multiple felonies, videos of practice sessions, equipment purchases, a manifesto explaining his philosophy about punishing wealthy women who don't know their place. The detective's expression darkened. How do you know about this? I met his gaze steadily. Alexander was always meticulous about documentation. He liked to plan things thoroughly. What I didn't tell him was that in my previous life, Alexander had shown me that storage unit during my final hours. He'd been so proud of his preparation, his attention to detail. He'd wanted me to understand exactly how long he'd been planning my destruction. I'll get a warrant, Rodriguez said, standing to leave. Detective, I called as he reached the door. When you find what's in that unit, Alexander's parole hearing will become irrelevant. After he left, I walked to my window again. The city sprawled below me, full of people who had no idea how close they'd come to having a monster walk free among them. In my previous life, Alexander had gone on to torture and kill 3 more women after me. Not this time. My phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I'd been expecting. Alexander Morrison, calling from Federal Correctional Institution. Will you accept the charges? I smiled, putting the call on speaker. Hello, Alexander. You bitch. His voice was hoarse, desperate. Emma's dead. She killed herself because of what you did to her. What I did? Alexander, I didn't force her to steal money or break into my property. I certainly didn't force her to get involved with a sociopathic embezzler. You destroyed her life. No, I saved everyone else's life from her. Emma was just as sick as you are, Alexander. She knew about your plans and participated willingly. The world is better without her. Silence on the other end. Then his voice dropped to a whisper. How do you know about my plans? Because you carried them out, Alexander. In another lifetime, you drugged me on our wedding night and tortured me to death. You showed me videos of your practice sessions, your detailed notes, your collection of tools. His breathing became ragged. That's impossible. You're insane. Am I? Tell me, Alexander, what's in storage unit 247? The line went dead silent except for his panicked breathing. You remember now, don't you? I continued conversationally. You're wondering how I could possibly know about your secret planning space, how I know about the manifesto you wrote, how I know about the videos you made practicing on those prostitutes you paid. Stop, he whispered. You showed me everything during my final hours, Alexander. You were so proud of your work. You wanted me to understand how thoroughly you'd planned my destruction. You called it your masterpiece. A sob escaped him. This isn't real. This isn't happening. Oh, but it is. And right now, Detective Rodriguez is getting a warrant for that storage unit. When they find what's inside, your parole hearing will become a death penalty hearing. Jenny, please. Did I beg, Alexander? In that room, when you locked me in with those men, did I beg you to stop? He was crying now, harsh sobs echoing through the prison phone. I begged, I continued relentlessly. I screamed your name. I told you I loved you, and you laughed. You actually laughed while they... Stop, I smiled, looking out at the sunset painting the sky blood red. No, Alexander, I will never stop. Because every day, for the rest of your miserable life, you're going to remember this conversation. You're going to wonder how I know things that haven't happened yet. You're going to drive yourself insane trying to figure out if I'm a psychic, or if you're losing your mind, or if somehow, impossibly, I've lived this before. His sobbing was pathetic now, broken. The truth is, It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is that this time I won. This time you're the one who's trapped. This time you're the one who's going to suffer. I hung up before he could respond. 3 hours later, Rodriguez called back. Jesus Christ, Jenny, what was in that storage unit? I have been a cop for 20 years and I've never seen anything like it. Bad? Bad enough that the DA is filing for the death penalty. Alexander Morrison will never see the outside of a prison cell again. I closed my eyes, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders that I'd been carrying for lifetimes. 1 month later, I stood at the altar of St. Patrick's Cathedral in a stunning white wedding dress. The man beside me wasn't Alexander, it was Ethan Harrison, who had proven to be everything Alexander pretended to be. Intelligent, genuinely caring, and most importantly, completely honest about his feelings. "Do you take this man to be your husband?" the priest asked. I looked out at the congregation, filled with friends and family who supported my happiness. My parents sat in the front row, tears of joy in their eyes. Maya stood as my maid of honour, beaming with pride. In another lifetime, this altar had been where Alexander would have publicly claimed me before privately destroying me. "I do," I said clearly, my voice carrying to every corner of the cathedral. As Ethan kissed me, I felt something I'd never experienced in my previous life. True peace. Alexander was locked away forever. Emma was gone. The empire they'd tried to steal was now mine, stronger than ever. That night, in the penthouse suite of our honeymoon hotel, I stood on the balcony, looking at the stars. Ethan wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. I leaned back against his chest, thinking of the girl I'd been in my previous life, naive, trusting, unprepared for betrayal. Then I thought of the woman I'd become. Powerful, strategic, unbreakable. "None," I whispered. "Not a single one." In the distance, fireworks began exploding over the harbour, painting the night sky in brilliant colours. Each burst of light felt like a celebration of the life I'd reclaimed, the future I'd secured, the justice I'd delivered. Alexander had intended to break me completely. Instead, he'd forged me into something far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. A woman who remembered everything. A woman who settled scores. A woman who always won. The fireworks reflected in my eyes as I smiled into the night, already planning my next move in the game of life I now played to win.